Oh, hello. Fancy seeing you here on a Monday morning, but glad you could join us. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week we will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their businesses to success in an ever-competitive business climate. So pour yourself a hot cup and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of Monday Morning Coffee. This week I have Josh Kunkel. He's the founder of and managing partner at Method Group, located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're a progressive firm focused on the emotion and experience of place. They focus on urban, mixed use, and historic preservation, housing, and office projects. So, Josh, thanks for being on today. It was here today because we had a pretty interesting back and forth in the Entrepreneurial Architect group over the past couple of weeks about the idea of open office versus remote firm. So I'm glad you would step in and be a companion episode to episode 142 of standard, one that we release on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a really interesting discussion, and what we really learned from that is that everybody certainly has a different opinion on what a remote firm looks like, because you have from one end, because I also posted this on my personal page too, and got some other answers well from non-architects, and so just out in the general business. And so you have all the way from the solo person that, of course, your office moves with you because your business is you, to we found a team in a company in California that they're 100%, they don't have a physical office at all, and their team is distributed across the world. And so I think that we landed that we're somewhere in between, at least on the remote office. So one of our team, she actually worked for a company, a tech company that was in that fully remote, no office, fully distributed category. And so she's been a great help in kind of coaching us on pros and cons, like what really worked, what didn't, kind of scenario planning for it. So in her view, we're probably 60 to 70%, fully remote. So we do have a physical office, but every one of our team members is set up to be able to, everybody has a laptop. All of our software is cloud-based. We use Dropbox, Zoom, Microsoft 365, BIM 360, all of those things to support our team. And everyone has worked fully remotely, outside the office. And some have worked several weeks outside of the office continuously due to health reasons or whatever. So really, whenever we started the firm, we started in June of 2018, so we're relatively new. We really set out to kind of break the mold a little bit, kind of reevaluate what it means to be an architecture firm and what it means to be an architecture firm that's, looking towards the future. Like, where is the industry going? And we know that architecture has been done the same way for a long time. And so there's multiple generations that are rooted in that idea that you have to physically be at your desk to get work done, largely because it was centered around the drafting table. So if you weren't at your drafting table, you did not get work done. So in a 60 or 72 inch drafting table is pretty hard to lug around. And whenever you're using a full-size sheet, a lot of people did have drafting tables at home, but you have to roll up the drawing, you have to risk, whatever thing might come in your way, a child, rainstorm, whatever, might come and mess up those precious hours of work, because there's no Control F in paper days. So we really set out to start tackling each one of those elements that make up an architecture firm and really question why is it done that way. And so this idea of remote office was one that was looked at. So really and out of financial savings and plus the fact I don't want to manage a server. I'm an IT person, but I don't enjoy getting down into the nitty gritty. So switching over to BIM 360 really kind of solidified that to go full laptop and go full mobile.
How many partners do you guys have at the firm?
So it's just me. I have 100% ownership, and then currently have 4. We've had as many as we have 4 plus 4, and then we've been as many as 8.
So if you're what was the primary? Was it just you wanting to be different? And here's where I'm going with this. You probably heard me talk about this on the podcast. So my wife is fascinated in the fact that Alex and I have to do everything out of the box. We just aren't satisfied as human beings, creative human beings, and architects, builders, and developers if we're not doing literally something that or that excites us and gets us out of bed every day. So was it just you? Did something push you there? Or like from work that you this is kind of what you desired? Because it's really fascinating that you're taking this. It's a very progressive approach to an architecture.
Yeah. So what we found, so we do a lot of personality testing within our team because highly engaged, highly productive teams do that because we focus on strengths. And so one of my strengths is activator. So in StrengthsFinder or in Myers-Briggs, I'm an NTJ, which is the mastermind or the architect. And then we have this 4 colors one where it's kind of this, it's green is what I'm primarily, but it's this intellectual, like rationalized, forward-looking kind of mindset. So my dad is a small business owner. He's a residential contractor. And so I've grown up with having a business owner for a parent my entire life. And so and before that, my family up in rural Wisconsin, they were all agrarian based. They were all farmers. And so, being on the farm, you kind of have to have that entrepreneurial spirit because it's not, you got to figure it out whenever something's wrong. And so that's just been kind of baked in, and with a grain of salt for sure, but my family is very, very German, and they tend to be very invested in technical fields. So right, wrong, or indifferent, that's my path backwards. So I've always known that I was going to be either a principal or a firm owner. It was just a matter of when. So we were at a larger big E, little a firm, and I was getting a little antsy, and we kind of saw a window. My wife was pregnant with our 4th child, so we have 4 boys that are soon to be 7 and under. So our oldest turns 7 next weekend. So 7, 5, 3, and 1, all boys. But it was kind of that right point, and then we approached our firm and said, hey, we have a different vision. What would you think if we spun off and took the whole thing with us and took all of our projects with us? Well, to our chagrin, they said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So we made it a win-win scenario, and so we took we had like 12 projects, 13 projects that we took with us. That sounds a lot better than what it is. Most of them didn't have fee or had ran out of fee. So there was 2 or 3 that really were good for us. But as we found, they slid, and one of them is still under construction. And then the other one wrapped up a couple of months ago. So we've been out a year and a half. So that revenue didn't pencil in where we thought it would. So that's been a big learning lesson for sure. I'm also optic, and that tends to hurt me sometimes.
Yeah. So, but was there anything at the old firm that pushed you towards, you know, you were like, obviously you have 4 kids. I have 4 kids too, as you probably know, and like that's always been a big thing for me. Like I was a single dad for about 3 years, had full, you know, it was just me and kids, and it was so paramount to be able to have that flexibility when they were very little, to be able to go in. And so was it? I always feel like people are doing, even with their parents, right? I mean, you talk about your parents, and some parents were not entrepreneurs, so that's kind of led to me to be like super entrepreneur. I'm just going to start a business every year, something like that. So is there anything like that?
Absolutely. So being a parent of 4 kids, you know, we had been on 4 different insurances, and so we got to know insurance really freaking well. And so what we knew is that most places didn't prioritize people that have families, especially, and on an insurance perspective, it's hugely expensive. It's a great burden. And then so the firm that I worked for previously, you had to pay per child because they weren't, they hadn't discovered the benefits of a PEO or a professional employment organization, but they were on a small business plan. So if you have 8 kids, then you pay 8 individuals. And so that gets to be just astronomically expensive versus a large company plan that's plus family. So we felt so one of our few benefits is that we actually pay for everybody's health, dental, vision for them and their family, 100%, which is, again, highly unusual in our industry. We also, and we have, our interior designer is on maternity leave right now, but we provide maternity and paternity and adoption leave. So maternity, we provide 12 weeks, which is a blend of short-term disability. So short-term disability pays 60%. So for that first 6 to 8 weeks, short-term kicks in, pays that, and then we cover the remaining up to 12 weeks. 12 weeks total leave. So again, it allows for, our mothers to be with their new child. And that's a very critical time for them to bond, and grow, and then be ready and mentally and physically be ready to come back into the office. So then paternity leave, I've taken a total of a week and a half on each of my 4 kids. And actually number 3, I think, was only a week. So 1 week off and then 1 week of half days. So honestly, that wasn't enough. So you're still exhausted after that, like, especially after 1 and 2, because our 2 didn't sleep. So, but yeah, so the other thing is flexible schedule. So whenever you're expected to be in the office from 8 to 5, that's really hard to be a parent sometimes. Like if you got to go to an OB visit, with your wife, or you got to go pick up the kids from school. So I take our kids to school every day during the week, and then I pick them up 2 times a week. And so I wouldn't be able to do that in a traditional firm. And so, or like if they have a Christmas program or an Easter program or whatever, I can go take the hour and a half and then come back and then get my work done. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Seriously. I think that's so critical. We have a bunch of young males and females at our firm, and we're trying to, we're one of Alex's goals and our goal this year is to get a savings fund up for that maternity leave and the paternity leave. I think it's important because I didn't get that. Alex sort of got it with his last child, but we don't want anybody else to kind of share that burden. I think and we hope it's reciprocal appreciation of sticking with and being loyal, because that's a problem right now, is that people change, right? So holding that loyalty. So it sounds like the first key for you setting up and starting in a largely remote firm, if not all remote firm, is really this personality test. That's kind of an interesting nugget to throw out. Can you talk about, it sounds like you did the two of them, right? Two different kinds. How do you run people through those? What's your process there?
So again, whenever we started, we kind of had people on the team that came over, but now that we're having new people come in, so we're doing personality testing from the beginning of the interview process. And so that's where we could talk about that too. Like we have 5 steps. We have 5 interviews for new folks, and we have steps in between those. So we really get to know a person before they come in the door. And our most recent person came through a referral and had worked with our interior designer previously. So we already had a working knowledge of who that person was, and then we put them through our filters to make sure that they were driven the same way we were, shared our core values, shared our purpose and all of that, and then also shared our passion for how we do architecture. So what we did, we just finished our annual planning. So we did 2 days of annual planning. The first day was really focused on vision and culture, and then the second day was focused on planning and action. So we use a system called EOS, or Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's written in a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. It's very similar to Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, if you've heard of that. And so it's kind of a way to run your business. So where we're looking at 3-year plan, 1-year plan, and quarterly goals, rocks, as they're called. And then also there's the component called IDS, so identify, discuss, and solve. So that's how we filter issues. So one of the issues that we talked about was the remote, but then back to the original, with the personality testing, we actually went through and realized that we have people that are the exact same profile, but they're very different people. And so we were kind of trying to understand what those differences were and where the similarities were. So again, it's just, we went through everybody's profile and understood everybody's pros and or strengths and weaknesses, and how we might be able to pair them up. If they had a weakness and somebody else had a strength on our team, we would then tip over those tasks that are traditionally on that role to the other person. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah. I got to wonder how long your hiring process takes if you're doing the 5-step, if you're doing these 5 different,
So our last one, we had a little bit of time to be able to, we couldn't hire that person immediately. So we took approximately a month and a half to 2 months to kind of filter through. Because again, so one of the things that we learned from somebody else that we integrated is, since we use all modes of communication amongst the team and amongst our clients, so we tested them. So like a call, a Zoom call, in-person meeting, email, and text. So we tested all in their proficiency, all of those. And then it was like, if we ask for something, one of our core values is responsiveness. So being responsive is very, very important to us, which I heard that I was listening to your guys' podcast episode right before Christmas on the way to the office today. And that's very familiar to hear it from you guys too. So whenever something sits for a little too long, you start getting antsy and start wondering if something's wrong on the other end. But giving throughout is very helpful to pull out those soft skills and to really gauge if you're going to match with that. But they have to be aligned with your values. So that may be something different if your core value is different.
Do you find that, so if, let's say somebody really fails at 2 of those tasks, and you email them, it takes them, I don't know what your rule of thumb is, ours is 24 hours, let's say it takes them 3 days to do it, to email back. I would call that a, so that, and then another example maybe is a text, sort of same thing, just a timeline, just to kind of keep it brass tacks. Do you still have a metric of you're like, well, they've passed 3 out of 5, we can train them in 2? And have you went down that road where they're still trainable? I mean, nobody's perfect, right? So.
Right. There are definitely some of those that are pretty innate to how you are as a human. And so responsiveness, it's your perception of it's you understanding what's on the other side of the table. So we define responsiveness the same way. So response within 24 hours. Internal is we're getting a little bit more definition on that, but it's usually within two hours in a core hour time frame, which is not related to office hours, which we decided we're not going to have office hours just because if I work better at 7 or 8 in the evening and my client works best at 7 or 8 in the evenings, there's no reason we shouldn't be available at 7 or 8 in the evenings. But you have to set up that expectation first.
Yeah.
So, but those 2 instances that you put there, yeah, I would agree. That's a failure. Unless you said, hey, I can't get to it right now. I'll get to it in 3 days, and then you get to it in 3 days. That would be a success. So, because again, that goes to that responding within 24 hours, and a response can be, hey, I got it, and I'm going to get to it in this time frame. So, yeah. Easy enough.
I love this. I love this methodology that you're describing about testing people with the soft skills. Hard skills, because the thing about soft skills is, even though some of them are innate, I just don't think you can. I'm not sure you can. Well, that's the thing. They're innate. They're highly innate, so you can train them as you can as a hard skill. Like a hard skill, you could say, okay, I know you think you know Revit or whatever, or any kind of CAD program. I know you think you know it, but pretend like you don't know it. Here's our tutorials. Go through them. Here's how we model. Here's how we draft. Here's examples. That is beautiful. Let's move into. So you do have about 30% of the staff that nobody can watch. You can see the video right now. Josh and I are talking. He's got a brick wall. He's at his office actually. So you got about 30% of your staff that is actually in a building, right? In a office that you lease, I assume. And then 70% is remote. Talk about the challenges that you've seen with remote and how you're trying to, all the remote workers, keeping them on task. I think that's the biggest fear that everybody talks about as well. I give them a task. How do I make sure that they're working? You know, are you setting expectations and deadlines? Is that also the critical part for you guys?
So, yeah, yes, but we handle it a little differently. So that's kind of one of where architecture, again, this is one of the mindset things that architecture has been always rooted in the fact that you're sitting next to the person that's doing the work and that you can kind of look over your shoulder and keep an eye on them. That's a very low trust environment. And so that's not there's very low accountability in that environment. So if you've hired this person to do something, as long as you're setting those expectations and you're training them up, they should be successful in that environment. Or have the ability to speak up and communicate whenever they don't understand something or they need clarification. So that's so you have to have that foundation before you can go to remote. That's why it's so important to vet so heavily coming in, especially whenever we're core values driven and we give these kind of freedoms and these leashes, I guess you could say, longer leashes, in that really we just care about results. So we're not caring so much about how you get there. We do care how you get there, and we have systems for that. And so if you know the systems, then you're going to be more successful. But if you do something a different way and you still end up with the same result, awesome. Maybe we can learn something from it. So
let's flip this question on the opposite. What are some complaints from remote people
so definitely not feeling like this is so Sarah, so we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sarah's in Austin, Texas. So she's been in the office 3 times the whole time she's worked for us. So one of their early on things was, well, I just don't feel like, I'm part of the team. And so that's where so at that point, we flipped all meetings to Zoom. And so we do all meetings via video call. We also got her engaged in more of our general meetings. And then also that's whenever we started, we dumped Office email for internal communications and we went to Slack. So all internal stuff is on Slack and it's open to, with the exception of a couple of channels, it's open to everyone. So even if you're not on a project, you have visibility and can see what's going on all the projects. So we've made another idea that I've had that we haven't yet implemented is doing an open lunch. So like one day a week, just sit in the conference room, pop on Zoom, and whoever shows up, and you can just talk around eating lunch. So but giving the opportunity for everybody to be together in one digital place. Yeah. Because those are the interactions that you miss from all being in a physical office. But the periods in between, so like whenever you're actually working, so that's where Slack, whenever you're responsive on Slack, you can ask a question and you get an answer. Like it's like they're just sitting there. So,
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was if I had to guess, that was kind of what maybe a complaint would be. It's a really obvious one to talk about and to hear. So let's wrap this up with if you could go back in time and 18 months ago, now knowing what you know now, and I know you're just going to continue to grow as a person and professional. If somebody else was looking to make the leap that you did in terms of starting up a hybrid office, what are some fundamental pieces of advice you could give them, sort of step by step, and then what are the fundamental pieces of software that you'd like to recommend to people to make this happen?
So one is really think about how and what is the purpose of having an office or physical space. So I know that Win Whitman on Entre Architect has talked about how he went through the recession and kind of switched to the virtual office, and he went through that. But I think for a lot of people, they still have this idea, this comfort rooted in being in an office with other people that are doing similar things as them. So like for me, I have to be in an office in a relatively quiet place. It doesn't necessarily have to be with other people, but I need to be away from the kids, and I know you can understand this too, because they're crawling all over you. My wife is more okay with this, so she's on our team, and so whenever she's on calls, she has, and Sarah, she has one that's very wild, and so she's crawling all over her during any of our calls, and it's fine. So, but I would really consider how you use physical space to then augment that digital experience. So for us, we actually took a lot more office space than what we probably needed. And so now we're got the big office that's fitted out. So we're actually going to be looking for a roommate to help augment that. We ran it as a co-working space, and just having that constant rotation of people and wondering, man, did they lock up the office? Did they arm the alarm? Did they leave the lights on? All of that was way too much mental burden on me. And so it's, even with the added money, it's not a good thing for me. So we're looking for a roommate, 6 to 8 people. So we'll see what we get. Yeah. And then software. So our kind of core pieces. So we use BIM 360 because we're Revit based. We do not have a physical server. We don't use Dropbox to host models or even one-off models. We use it for everything. Dropbox is our file server, and it's very responsive. Everybody has it on their desktop and uses it just like a regular server. Plus, it's very easy to share. We were in Google whenever we started, and we found that Google kind of tops out and has customization or lack of customization, and the share settings were not, it was all one thing or everything on Dress, which was terrible for how we work, because we're very, very collaborative. So we wanted to be able to share a folder within the project. You couldn't do that with Google. Then Microsoft Office 365, Outlook, Word, Excel. We do use PowerPoint on occasion. Then we have some that use the Adobe Suite, Creative Suite Cloud. And then we use Excello for our project management, which has been good so far. It gives us a lot of visibility into the financials and the health of the projects. It's what we use for time tracking. Most importantly, it looks good. We were looking at Deltek Jira, which was priced similarly, and it looked like accounting software. And you had to know special terminology, and it was very cumbersome. So that's been very helpful. And then it overlays on top of QuickBooks Online for our accounting. Bluebeam for PDFs. And so we use the collaborative review. So you can host a document in the cloud, send a link to people. They don't have to have Bluebeam, and then they can mark up there in real time, which is nice.
And then obviously Zoom. You've mentioned Zoom a couple times. I think that one's a critical one. Is there any reason you put Zoom or anything else? We're on join.me right now, and it's just sort of a, I don't know, it was a sort of rope this in, and now we're just used to it, and so we make it happen. Plus, I can record. I mean, I know you can record on Zoom too, and we don't have a problem with either one. But was there a particular reason why you prefer Zoom over any other ones?
It's just so easy. So, and the graphics are nice on it too. So again, that visual is very important to us in most everything we do. So yeah, it just looked good. And a lot of the people that we were working with at the time were using it also.
What about, one thing we haven't touched about that I just thought about was like printing. From the day one when we've had F9, we've never had a big plotter, and we never will. After going to college, I was like, worth it. It's so much money. It breaks down, and I don't have an IT person. We're very small. And so we farm everything out, except for we do have a couple of brothers band, and it works well. How do you handle that for remotely? Do you guys remote people?
So we're 80% digital in that regard. So like we have one client that counts for like probably 80% of our printing, and so that's a municipality. It's because their standard is you print 12 or 20 sets or whatever each. It's insane. So so that's where we just, it's cheaper and easier. They deliver. They will even, like, it saves us money. So they will deliver to our clients too. So so we don't have that low level staff position like an administrative assistant or an intern that can go run documents in our office. So it's easier for somebody else to do it. I think it's actually cheaper to find out too. because you're not having to, because then there's the time you have to actually sit and put the set together and staple it and do all the, all that stuff, and that costs time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, Josh, this has been you're doing something that's just incredibly interesting, but I think it's the way that everybody's going towards, even if they just built an office like we did, I think there's still, I do the same thing with you. I drop off the kids every day, so I don't get in until about 9, and then sometimes I'll be early later, and just the flexibility in that's where people are at in life. So where can people, if anybody's listening to this, and it doesn't matter if they're an architect or another entrepreneur, if they want to get in touch with you, where could they get in touch with you? How could they follow you?
So our website is really our main place, method.group. And then you can, of course, find us on Facebook and Instagram. I think we are Method Arch OK in both places. So we post a lot on both Instagram and Facebook. We're on LinkedIn also, but it's not nearly as frequent. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and then I don't do Instagram. So, we're very available.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on the iTunes app. Tip your barista, and we'll see you next week for more Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm.